Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's Daksha Dialogue on Online Dispute Resolution, Balancing Innovation and Access. The pandemic has forced us to think about online dispute resolution more closely and look at the options it has to offer for dispute resolution. But in the meantime, online dispute resolution has, in the past 20 odd years, been working steadily at innovating and reimagining dispute resolution and solutions, always in the sidelines. Today we discuss, the conceptions of online dispute resolution, the possibilities it offers, and the concerns that we have with online dispute resolution with three panelists, each of whom have been working on online dispute resolution for some time. Our first panelist is Justice Kannan. Justice Kannan is a retired judge of the Madras High Court and then the Punjab and Haryana High Court. Prior to this, he was a designated senior counsel practicing in the Madras High Court and a trained mediator. Justice Kannan has been a proponent of collaborative dispute resolution even before mediation systems were set up in the courts, and he has worked towards, worked on people coming together in resolving their disputes. Since his retirement, Justice Kannan has been actively involved in mediation. He is part of the committee set up by the Mediation and Conciliation Project Committee of the Supreme Court that is looking at a new legislation on mediation. Justice Kannan has also founded Madhyastham, a center for mediation and arbitration practice. Welcome, Justice Kannan, to today's discussion.
Pleasure joining.
Sachin Malhan is our next panelist. Sachin is the founder of Agami, which works towards improving law and justice through collaboration, through innovation and entrepreneurship. Prior to this, Sachin was heading the Changemaker program at Ashoka. Sachin has had other ventures before, Rainmaker. He has worked towards ensuring access, literacy to, disabled persons. Welcome, Sachin, to the discussion. Our third panelist is Chittu Nagarajan. Chittu is one of the pioneers in ODR. She worked with PayPal and eBay, and she was managing the community courts and innovation that eBay had developed in the mid-90s. She has since set up Modria, a platform for online dispute resolution, and most recently, she has set up Crack ODR, which is an ODR technology support platform. Welcome, Chittu, to the discussion today. I will start with Sachin. Sachin, we define ODR as online dispute resolution as the dispute resolution that involves information technology. How would you define ODR?
I think it's a really critical question. The reason is that there is this prevalent idea that ODR is simply mediation and arbitration going online, or negotiation, mediation, arbitration going online. But anyone who's familiar with the power of technology and data will know that actually that is an inadequate definition. So in many ways, I feel that the definition of ODR is still being written. And because the potential is not as simple as just digitizing mediation, digitizing negotiation, digitizing arbitration. So I would like to say that ODR is, the possibilities of resolving disputes when one combines techniques such as ADR techniques along with the power of technology and data. So I think that is a good definition, a better definition, because it gets us past the baggage of just digitizing mediation. Because lots of people say, okay, if you do video conferencing and arbitration, is it ODR? And yes, it is ODR, but also is ODR when a dispute is, when there's a custom journey created online that understands you as a person and then resolves disputes through literacy, through solutions halfway in the middle, then negotiation, then if mediation if required. These kind of interesting creative combinations that ODR opens up, I think that we are still seeing the limits of that. So that's the reason why I look at it as the potential of technology and data combined with ADR techniques to mitigate and resolve disputes, to get it past the baggage of where we're coming from, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the definition I proposed is very passive compared to how you have described ODR. You know, in the 90s when, you know, work on ODR was started, the first sort of imagining or reimagining of the use of online, you know, processes to resolve disputes was through email. Chitu, can you share with us the story of ODR? What the initial efforts were, where it has grown, what are the innovations, what are the disruptions around the different dispute processes?
Sure. So ODR was actually born out of e-commerce disputes. When you know, you had the e-commerce boom in the late 1990s, and you know, they did not know how to handle the disputes which were coming online. Where is the jurisdiction? Where did the sale happen? When the sale happens, what happens, right? And so typically when there is a dispute, then, you know, terms come in, contract comes in, jurisdiction comes in, and they were not able to resolve that, especially for e-commerce disputes. So in 1999, eBay actually started an experiment with Professor Ethan Cash of the National Center for Technology and Dispute Resolution at the University of Massachusetts. They went up to him and they said that, you know, we have these disputes, how do we resolve it? So he started a small experiment where he said, okay, let's put, you know, this technology together where you would actually mediate these disputes. And that's the first step he took at that time, where he set up a small platform and he said, okay, let, you know, mediators come in, we'll use email, we'll use, you know, a sort of a, you know, text. And the first week he had 258 disputes. So there were like loads of disputes which were coming in, and, you know, then, you know, Ethan thought that, yes, this is the way forward. At the same time, Colin was also working on his book called Online Dispute Resolution for Business. And Ethan started writing something called the technology as the fourth party for dispute resolution, right? So what that fourth party actually meant is, over here we do have, you know, party A, party B, you might have other things, but you know, you actually have technology aiding in the dispute resolution. That's what he wanted dispute resolution technology to do. And online dispute resolution actually is the fourth party. So that's where it started in 1999. And gradually it grew where more and more people were seeing that, you know, technology can aid in dispute resolution. And eBay started, you know, really setting up a team for ODR in 2003-04. And when they started this, you know, this ODR process for eBay, it's really funny because, you know, they wanted technology to actually play the fourth party and resolve these disputes. And they wanted that, or rather, you know, the dispute design people like Colin and myself, we wanted, you know, the percentage where it reaches a neutral to really reduce. And so to leverage a technology, to harness technology, and we were able to achieve great results of, you know, 60 million disputes. You hear this all the time, resolved via software, 90%, you know, just by software, and just 10% reaching that neutral. That was the power of technology, which started way back then. But after that, you know, it started booming. Many people were not in for ODR. We've had loads of challenges. People did not want to use online dispute resolution. People were not open to using technology. I think, you know, COVID-19 is actually where you're seeing this boom. But, you know, a couple of years ago, till about 3-4 years ago, again, still, you know, we had a great challenge educating people, letting them know that this was going to be the future. But no one saw it coming, no one wanted it. So it was quite tough for us to like sail through those waters. But it was great because from e-commerce, slowly we could get into tax disputes, we could get into courts, we could get into family disputes, lots of other things where, you know, we've been able to see the power of technology, the power of online dispute resolution being used. But what I'm seeing presently is, you know, where it started was actually with data. It started with, you know, technology actually taking data, making some informative solutions, informative resolutions. But then, you know, slowly, I think when people started seeing online dispute resolution as just a process of ADR online, you see more of mediation, arbitration, negotiation going. But as Sachin mentioned, that's not the real power. We really need to realize the power of, you know, online dispute resolution, what it was built for, what it was meant for, and harness the technology to be able to achieve that and much more, rather than, you know, just narrowing it down to negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. Even though, you know, we're seeing all across the globe, you know, people actually using ODR right now for many types of disputes. But there's so much more which can happen, especially in all of these disputes where we can harness technology and data.
Chitu, can you describe or lay the landscape of, you know, what the possibilities are in ODR today?
Tremendous possibility. I think it's just that, you know, of course, you know, we are talking about, I think, you know, we all have a background of law, mediation, arbitration, judgment, but I think it should be disruptive, right? It's just not used for this type of dispute resolution. What is dispute resolution, right? Let's not restrict ourselves to this. Let it be transformative. Let it be disruptive. You know, we've actually done many experiments. We've done experiments with, you know, Afghanistan housing disputes where we used to use only map location. And this was just like 6 years ago, right? Not even now. And how do you actually do it via the mobile phone? So, you know, for land disputes, for civil disputes, especially in India, there are a lot of areas where we can use ODR just to unclog the courts, as well as preventive measures. One of the first things we did was for microfinance disputes, but we don't see it anywhere now. You know, if you look at agricultural disputes, which can be done, rural areas where, you know, we can really use this, that's not being done as well. So I think, you know, there's a tremendous possibility of what can be achieved, but we are looking more at, you know, financial sectors, insurance sectors, telecom sectors, unclogging the courts. But there's so much more which can be done, especially with technology and open platforms and APIs. It's tremendous.
Thanks, Chitu. So, Sachin, back to you. What capacities do we need to build to harness this? Because Chitu was talking about, she gives examples of rural disputes, microfinance disputes. So, you know, disputes at the grassroots level. So what are the capacities we need to harness this?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of, I look at it as two things. One is, and I'm going to interpret your question kind of a little liberally, but I'm going to say one is the capacity to see where true dispute resolution capacity lies. Like here's what I mean by that. What I mean by that is, you know, that there is this conversation happening right now around, you know, like even take mediation. Should only lawyers be mediators and those kinds of conversations, right? Like I find them so counterproductive. It's hugely concerning for me because I have come across so many retired bank managers, you know, people who worked in fields who are so adept at stepping in and being a part of a process that can resolve something, you know. So one is the capacity to see ODR is bigger than the legal field. It's very important. And that is only going to happen if you have enough people who are ambassadoring it or evangelizing it in the right way. It cannot be hijacked by only the legal community, because dispute resolution is a big a big issue. It affects everybody way beyond the concept of the courts and law, right? So I think that one is the capacity, the leadership capacity, the community capacity to recognize what's at stake here and not constrain it, but to actually unlock true possibilities. Once you have that mindset, then the second thing is, how do you develop skills, right? And I think this is the second part, which is there is this prevailing idea that, it is not a skilled profession. Like in the sense that, okay, you've been a lawyer or you've been a judge or you whatever, so you would know mediation. And I think that so, you need to recognize that not just mediation, but ODR has specific skill sets. For instance, I'll give a very small example. If you look at the human skilling part, and I'm coming to the last part that Chitu was talking about, which is the technology capacity, right? Like, let's leave that aside, but I'm talking about even the neutral capacity that flows into ODR, right? The neutral, insofar as the neutral capacity, I think that we have to recognize that there's going to be a lot of learning. Like when you look at the mental health space, there was a lot of times mental health professionals said you can't do counseling online, and today we are realizing that counseling is happening online, and it is happening differently. It has lots to learn from offline counseling, but its unique art form where the technology blends with the human piece. Like how does the software you're looking at respond? What are the technological innovations, Chitra, that make you feel heard, that make you, like, so many dimensions. So, that second part of recognizing this is an area of skill, of human skill, of man-machine skill that we will have to train for, we'll have to develop capabilities for. So that's the second part, that thinking from a point of view of developing skills and having a respect to say this is an area that requires skills, just like mediation requires skills, online mediation requires skills, and ODR requires a layer of skills on top of that. So one is the leadership capacity to see it. Second is this kind of neutral capacity. And the third is the techno-legal capacity. And the techno-legal capacity is a very interesting dilemma, which is we have so many silos. How are we going to develop the capacity where you have a new breed of people who understand, who talk the language of technology and data, and who can understand and be conversant with the language of the legal dimensions and things, so that they can design systems that are robust, that work for everybody. I think that is sometimes, like, even if you look at the ODR space right now, I see a proliferation of lawyer-driven ODR startups, which is great, don't get me wrong, but I'd like to see more well-rounded ODR startups and solutions that are coming from, multi-scale. They're not, and sometimes I find, sadly, an ODR startup will underplay its non-lawyer co-founder and say, here is our co-founder, he's a lawyer. Don't worry, we're okay, we're legitimate, hum log theek hain. I find that just brilliant. So I think that we'll have to look at capacity at all levels, and we have to work at different levels. One level of work is the current leadership around mediation practice, around ADR, around MCPC and stuff. How does that rise to the challenge of first setting the right agenda for where it needs to be? If insofar as where that relates to ODR, some parts of ODR have nothing to do with mediation, but that leadership. So I think different work will have to happen, Chitra, at different levels to develop that capacity, and the last thing is, of course, the question of standards, which is also maturing this space by having the capacity to ensure neutrality, ensure confidentiality, ensure data protection. That's also a kind of capacity. So I would say work has to happen at different levels. It is happening at different levels, but most important thing is the mindsets. The leadership and the mindsets we have to call it out. We have to have brutally honest conversations when the mindsets are restrictive. And I have no hesitation, because I guess as not a mediator, I am happy to be shot from all sides. Shoot me and tell me I'm disrespecting. I'm a lawyer myself, with one foot, but I have seen so much restrictive conversation around what can truly be a liberating change for our country. I'm happy to call it out,
And Sachin, I think I'm going to go back and narrow it again when I asked Justice Kannan this question, but bearing in mind the various points that Sachin has raised in terms of capacity, what are the initiatives that the courts have taken? What is the leadership and the mindset change that Sachin speaks of that we have seen with the courts as far as ODR is concerned?
Yeah, Chitra, I'm glad Sachin started with saying that ODR ought not to be understood merely as some alternative systems like mediation, arbitration. It's all available, how it is practiced. And we were talking about how it is to be mainstream and how it is to be seen in court systems. And again, I was happy that Chitu was talking about technology as the fourth machinery, which is an action. So this again is what is going to be soon taking place, and both of which I think I should tell you now. Just to have its relevance, when we are talking about 32.98 million cases which are pending, that is today, and having the judicial grid, data grid, which offers this statistics. Let us not be talking about where we can employ it outside the court system. How much of it we can bring within the court system makes a lot of sense. Again, will you believe me if I tell you that the cases which are more than 30 years old today, the record shows is 85,159 cases, 30 years and more. And then we are talking about 20 to 30 years, there's still about 419,000, about 419,000, and 10 to 20 years, about 2.3 million. So we have large numbers to cope with, and therefore, how much of technology we are able to bring in is surely a matter of importance. And today, just a few days back, the Chief Justice of India was talking about how certain things have happened now, and that's not going to be, there is no looking back. He said, eventually we must settle down to a system which is a combination of the new and the old. So you're saying there are cases which have come to be heard applying both the old and the new methods of hearing. And then they said, one thing for sure is that there is no looking back. We will have to accept the present situation and change our mindset. This is again what Sachin was just now talking about, the mindset change. And what has happened now in the courts? Just see, but at all times we keep saying when we are looking at the numbers, no other country has this kind of number. Our performance has always been below par, so how we are looking at. But now probably everyone agrees what India has done and what the Supreme Court has done as a leader has been significant. All papers have reported. The Times of India carried a news yesterday where I saw that from 23rd March, the Supreme Court has done about 7,000 cases in virtual courts hearings. That's a very large number. If you only bring a comparison to, and out of 7,000 cases, about 700 cases, 700 orders have been passed. And UK Supreme Court has heard about 10 cases in all. Australia has heard about 94 cases and they've pronounced 12 judgments. Look to again, we have 700 cases decided. And then Canada Supreme Court has heard about 17 cases and delivered about 5 judgments. And South Africa 51, Singapore 146 cases they've heard, disposed of 98. Spain probably comes somewhere in bigger numbers, in hundreds, 800 cases have been disposed of by Spain. But then I don't really know what Brazil has done, because Brazil has a record of more cases pending than India. So they have more than 32 million cases. I don't know what they've done, but we have done rather well. And therefore the Supreme Court and the Chief Justice of India saying things have changed in a big way is a method of reckoning that we are really moving up. And many courts have done that. That is one thing. The court is now adopting technology to accepting files through internet. Filing is possible, e-filing is possible. And I must say in several places, yesterday I was doing a case from when the witness was being examined at the ADR center at Gurgaon. I'd spoken to the district judge there. He immediately made the facility available for me to connect to the party, and the cross-examination was happening from Chennai to witness was coming to the ADR center there. Almost all the ADR centers, if you will know that in every district, probably the 13th Finance Commission in 2010 they provided fairly a large resource allocation, more than 1,000 crores. And you have area center everywhere with internet technology available where access is possible. I've employed it even as a chairman of the Railway Claims Tribunal, examining witnesses from Guwahati by asking that person to go to a nearby district center and calling for evidence and then recording it there in Delhi where I used to be holding the bench. So these is slowly getting integrated, and sure enough, the Chief Justice says that come to stay, and I expect therefore a lot of initiatives to be taken and given. One point of what Chittu was saying, that she sees technology as the fourth party. That is very interesting to me. If you see technology as not merely a medium and to be employed for dispute resolution, but it can itself provide the tool of a dispute resolution. That's a great thing, isn't it? So therefore, in that context, I must tell you, there is a committee now on artificial intelligence, which is going into the extent to which we can use machine learning for court applications, and to what extent we can integrate them into the system. I must tell you, even at the beginning of the meeting, Chief was ready to caution us to say that we will not, because he knew that if it is ever going to be stated that machines are going to be deciding cases, it will be, or artificial intelligence, it will be that be employed for determination of disputes, and there could have been a big resistance, there could have been a few impact. Therefore, he cautioned us, and he was saying that you will see that human intelligence through judgment making may not be substituted, but then there is a large scope for us to see that AI plays a big role in assisting courts to decide. So therefore, as a first area of activity, all the judgments are available in about 9 languages. You have now even Bengali, Urdu, Tamil, all that is available on the click of when you go to the Supreme Court judgments, you can seek for a translation through any one of this where you have artificial intelligence and application. You're talking about understanding judgments, access, how it can aid is that. And again, in some area, to take a large volume of data, what is available, and to make them computer legible, and then making possible through questions which we have generated, anticipated the questions of what can happen, what a judge would like to know in a given set of facts, and then enable through AI to pick up answers for whatever question that may come to the judge. Instead of a lawyer running through the pages when he has something close to about 2,000 pages or something like that, when he's running through the file, not able to look to him, look at the junior, criticize him once or twice, and then look at the judge and say, no, I'll come to it, and things. Now it's possible for you to get it immediately. Answers are possible. So now it's reasonably in a state of implementation. It could happen immediately when the regular court hearings are happening. It could be taken right now. It is used for translation. AI has come to stay. And then as a pilot, some areas of categorization. Some of the courts, Bombay High Court and probably Delhi also, they decided, the Chief Justice, they were consulted, and they were being asked to see whether some cases could be clubbed together depending on the data available, the congruity of issues, so that the machine will pick up all of that quickly. You can put that in place. So therefore, there is something good happening all around. It's not that we are not doing well, like I said, the Supreme Court has shown the way. So I would like to believe that technology is coming in a big way. I'm sure as to where we can employ more, what are the innovations, I will soon, if I have the occasion, I can say that also. This is, I see, how our courts are embracing technology slowly, and lawyers have suddenly now, I've seen, previously there used to be resistance. In yet another case where I was doing an arbitration, when a witness was to be contacted from Malaysia, the lawyer was saying now for 1 or 2 questions when he was kind of going around, wouldn't answer. He looked at me and said, sir, if this person is before me, I'll crush him to pieces. But then look at how he is able to evade through this. So I said, don't worry, you just go on. He said, you don't need to crush him. You will be able to get the answers if you go. And then the second hearing, I saw that the lawyer was truly in his elements. He had the witness wholly in his hands. So the kind of initial reluctance of where you have I'm sure people are prepared to shed it by and by. And I see the same kind of a thing happen from some of the leaders, the Bar Council of India, saying that real courts, the actual courts must come. Immediately they ask the courts to resume functioning. They wouldn't be too happy about this virtual courts. Obviously, anyone understands that virtual courts cannot substitute the way the courts are done. But a lot of new innovations are happening, like what the Delhi High Court has said. One of the judges, Justice Vida, has said, you give me your arguments, either an oral or video recording of what you want to say through a pen drive. I'll see what I can do and then pass it on and pass orders. So therefore, there are new innovations happening. We'll come to more innovations of where you think is possible. From my understanding, I'll be able to share. This is where I think, Chitra, where the courts are doing about how technology can be brought into the way it can function.
Thanks, Justice Kannan. What are the initiatives at the national level, Sachin, for embracing ODR a little more vigorously?
Yeah, Chitra, I'm so glad you asked me this after Justice Kannan finished, because he's absolutely right. I'm not going to say for the first time, but it is remarkable to see the breadth of vision that the Supreme Court itself is bringing. Like, for instance, just to quote Justice Chandrachud, when he recently said, I see justice not as a place, but as a service. When he said that, that's huge. Because, and he took it further, otherwise you can always say maybe it's a beautiful quote, but he took it a step further, right? He said, let me explain. He says, I see it as many systems, many things that are contributing to access to justice. And I see them talking to each other. And they were talking about data. For instance, the idea that if one day you have pre-litigation ODR happening inside industry ecosystems, inside social systems, like they are doing their own resolution through different techniques, then can the data flow into the courts? So the courts can get visibility into which disputes get exacerbated fast, what are the remedies that actually help. And similarly, the data of the courts is flowing into these so-called informal systems. So I think this kind of expansive vision where the citizen is put at the center and the goal is to serve justice, and the service is recognized as happening through a variety of systems, I think that's really powerful, because, if you ask, then it converts itself into very tangible things. For instance, number one, you start becoming supportive of ideas like pre-litigation ODR, private ODR, not just court annex systems, but also ODR happening, encouragement for ODR systems to be built inside business processes, just the way Chittu was talking about eBay and others. But you also have things like support for APIs, so that data becomes interchangeable and exchangeable between courts. Because, historically, there's been a concern, right? Courts have always put the data behind CAPTCHAs, saying that the court, okay, one person can get it, but if they get it as a whole, will they abuse it? But the idea that in place mechanisms, but we should enable for data to become something that everybody can draw from, subject to certain conditions, so that we can all create better and better solutions. So I think that when you have the Supreme Court making that kind of statement, that becomes a demand generator, right, Chitra? Everybody steps in and says, what are the innovations? And you're starting to see that now. For instance, Niti Aayog has taken on ODR as a priority for itself, which is huge, because it's put it on the same level as, financial online digital payments, electrification of transport. It's put itself as a national priority. And this has happened just two weeks back when they brought together, in fact, Agami worked with them to bring together Justice Chandrachud, Justice Kaul, Justice Indu Malhotra, and along with 6 secretaries, leading secretaries of the ministries in West India, a whole bunch of critical stakeholders who all really said the same thing, that innovations in dispute resolution are going to be instrumental for the economic and social success of the country. So let's very consciously recognize what are the barriers and move them. And also let's provide the encouragement. I think that this is huge because then there's an alignment at the governmental level, there's an alignment translating this into the concrete steps of the mediation legislation, the kind of support for ODR through ministry circulars, judicial pronouncements that remove certain roadblocks. This is going to be critical. There's no doubt. You can't just say it at an intention level, but even the declaration of intention is such a tremendous kind of confidence measure that then the industry and the entrepreneurial ecosystem, they have that much more energy. They say, yes, this is supported, this is something to be done, now let's innovate. Let's self-organize, let's self-regulate, let's do all the things. So I think you're going to start seeing, so with this Niti Aayog taking this on, you're going to start to see tremendous amount of mobilization in this area. And I'm hoping that the governmental and also the legislative changes, I think there are some couple of critical legislative changes will hopefully happen. But I don't think the industry and the entrepreneurial ecosystem is waiting for that. I think even the blessing that has come is going to have its own ripple effect.
Chitu, the UNCITRAL had taken steps to sort of, have regulations or a set of standards for online dispute resolution. But in the recent past, what are the global initiatives that you are seeing on online dispute resolution? We've lost Chitu. Let's wait a minute to see if...
I think Chitu was trying to show that ODR doesn't depend on the human being. 2-minute demonstration.
Welcome back, Chitu.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, my question to you was, what's happening at the global level? I mean, many years ago, we had the UNCITRAL setting standards, but what are the initiatives? What do you see at the global level for ODR?
So world over right now, lots of stuff is happening in online dispute resolution. All the countries have taken a leap. It's great to see that. Agami organized with Niti Aayog the meeting for online dispute resolution, where you had all of these judges and powerhouses coming together, making ODR a national cause, talking about online dispute. It was absolutely great. The same way, if you look at it, Israel has taken a step now where the Supreme Court has actually set up a committee to look into online dispute resolution. You see a lot happening in the African continent. Europe always had ODR as the priority for e-commerce disputes, or I should say online transactions. The European Commission has an ODR platform where they say all online services or products which you sell should have ODR available to them. Then you move to UK, and then you have remote that that's a priority. Her Majesty's Online Court was already there, so that's also taken a priority. A lot of buzz happening in that area. You move on to China. I think China is actually a leader in this space. We fail to talk about China, but there's a lot happening over there. With Alibaba pumping in a lot of money into this. The internet courts are over there. Millions of disputes being resolved via online dispute resolution at the internet courts, e-commerce disputes, Alipay, lots of disputes. And they actually are putting in a lot of money into ODR even before this pandemic, right? Last year, we had a conversation where they actually wanted to invest a lot of money into this field. Apart from this, the US, a lot of court-annexed ODR has taken a leap. Canada as well. You have the Civil Resolution Tribunal in British Columbia, which was one of the first to start all small claims court online. Lot of ODR is happening in Brazil. We have a lot of cases, as Justice Kannan just now mentioned, but there are lots of things happening. One of the things which I think I would like to mention is when we are talking about Sachin just mentioned that let's look at different ways of resolving these disputes rather than just having mediators, having arbitrators. Early the way back then when Sachin said that community courts, what we did for eBay, we did not use any mediators, nothing. It was just the community resolving the disputes. And do you know where we took inspiration from? We took inspiration from India panchayat systems. The village, rural areas. That's where, the inspiration. Jury, you had jury in the US and UK and all of that. But, it's similar to that. So that's what we did. And we were very successful with the community resolving it, right? So we don't want to actually escalate it, but there are different ways. Why should it just be legal, which is actually frustrating, which is like, you know, you don't want to go that route. So, you know, is there a different path? And even, you know, when you're talking about arbitration, when you're talking about all of that, that also has, you know, a legal thing attached to it, right? So break away from it to think about, you know, different things of how they can resolve within this. If you look at, you know, patent disputes, for instance, engineers resolve disputes, right? You don't have, and they get trained in mediation and then they dispute. So, you know, those are the things which we are looking at. There is a very good program in Greece for refugees, where they're using online dispute resolution, and where they were training all of these students to be mediators, and for, you know, these refugee disputes. And something which is happening next week is ICODER, the International Council for Online Dispute Resolution, along with National Center for Technology and Dispute Resolution. We are actually opening a dialogue for human rights, ODR and human rights. So, you know, the scope is large, and, you know, this is what's happening world over. But world over at this time, because of COVID-19, everybody is moving online. So you hear a lot of buzz from the mediation community, from the, you know, courts, because, you know, trying to grapple with, you know, what they can do. But other things are also moving.
Thanks, Chitu. You know, I know you were involved in an initiative to actually bring technological interface to Jirga in Afghanistan, which is a community dispute resolution, traditional community dispute resolution process that is followed there. My concern, and I think you tried to disabuse it a little ahead, but coming back to, you know, one of the fundamental issues in the topic that we're discussing, are we looking at all of this through an urban lens? Justice Kannan, is this a privileged conversation that we're having? How do we address the issue of access? How do, you know, especially when we're talking about ODR being mainstreamed now and sort of democratized, you know, in the vision that Sachin has, how do we address that? Justice Kannan, I think your mic is muted.
Yeah, somewhere the reluctance, if at all it exists, and if you see some dissonant voices coming from the Bar Council, it is literally in the context of how the members, the leaders of the bar, some of them through the Bar Council, they are saying that there are the haves and the have-nots. There are so many lawyers who do not have access to computers. Forget about the litigants, even the lawyers don't have enough access to computers. And internet connectivity is a problem in several places in the district and the taluk centers. So what do we do is what they're saying. But there's one thing, if we can take a lesson from what has happened in the medical field. I've been in Chandigarh for long, and I've seen PGMR as one of the tertiary care centers that would take on cases from the villages. They used to be a lot of cases referred through telemedicine. And I've actually sat there in the room where you have the doctors, where the patients are brought there at the other end in some remote corner from Punjab, and then is brought before the camera, and then the doctor showing the person, and then the doctor here in Chandigarh looking at the person, asking questions, and then trying to elicit what is the problem, and then giving out prescriptions. Now, things are not very different. If you're looking at how we can handle things in courts, are we going to be saying that the smartphone usage is confined only to cities and to elite class? Surely you will not. And the kind of penetration it has happened right through the villages is enormous. Everyone understands it. And therefore, you don't really look to having large computers and things. It's possible if you can handhold a cell phone, it's possible for you to be connected. And that is not very difficult. Even if it is not done, like I originally started with saying, that we have done rather well in establishing ADR centers across India, in almost every district. You name a district, then you have an area center where you have a construction made at least for about 1 crore and odd. That is a kind of construction where with the infrastructure built reasonably well. So therefore, to get them to the district centers and then recording evidence will be possible. And having kiosks in several places. That's where I draw a lot of inspiration from what the Chief Justice was saying. This has come to stay. There is no way of going back. And if e-filing will take place in the Supreme Court, it will take place in the High Court, it will take place in the District Court, and I have no doubt at all it will take place at the taluk centers as well. What is the difficulty if you have only an organized, dedicated staff for that? There are some issues which are still there, I must confess, because I was helping some person file a case in the Madras High Court to take some urgent interim order. So therefore, I saw there was some very serious problem which my junior was encountering. You would send all documents. There were large documents, some civil dispute or what a person had, and large documents. They were all in zip file, and then the person at the other end says, "Sir, I have only my cell phone. I'm not able to unzip this file. So what do I do?" So I was surprised that the High Court had not put in the hands of a person who is supposed to deal with the files which he is receiving with a computer, a dedicated computer for his use. But then the person was probably working from home. I don't know where it was. But I'm told things are not as bad. But still, they have a long way to go. We have to improve with no big deal, not a large expenditure. I would like to believe that if no resource allocations are made, if there is not going to be any more judges appointed, with the existing infrastructure, it should be still possible for us to get all that happening with some minimum application of your priorities and see how we can do. So I will not see this to be an elitist agenda at all. It should be possible for anyone to be easily connected. And that is what and it will be wrong to be thinking that our villages, our people there, and the rural folk do not understand. A lot of the persons, I know a person, the watchman there from my native town, he has a cell phone, he calls by video and speaks. So these kind of things happen from smaller places also. Therefore, let us not belittle their efficiency. In fact, this probably affords a lot of scope for rural employment. In UP or probably in some states, where the states are saying, now we will not let this migrant labor going back to other places. Almost it seems like the states like Bihar, UP, Madhya Pradesh, from where a lot of persons have gone to other states. Those states are really looking at what they will do with the local manpower which is available. I'm sure if we have kiosks set up in various taluk centers, sub-district centers for e-filing, the same way as it has happened for Aadhaar and things, so much of help is provided there in small villages. The same way for direct transfers of what money comes to various persons through this Jandan accounts, they're happening with internet connectivity, and which is available there at the RDO's office or someplace in public offices, which are not, you don't need to be extremely tech savvy to have all these things done. So therefore, to that extent, what are we looking at in a litigation scenario for a party? That you should be able to communicate. You should be able to meet with the person and then say what his grievance is. All that is possible with the existing infrastructure itself. So I will not fend off an idea of bringing technology in a big way, even in the rural centers, because what is available is sufficient. And we need to probably slightly improve here, there, and it is not going to take a lot of resource allocation. So I'm sure there is a lot of scope for integrating technology even at the taluk level, and it will happen. There should be a big reservation.
We've had some questions from participants. I will tie it in with the last question, which I want all three of you to weigh in on, which is what are the regulatory changes that you feel are needed for ODR, for online dispute resolution? People have asked if you need a statute that governs online dispute resolution. There is a question on the personal data protection bill and how it ties in with online dispute resolution. So if the three of you could weigh in turn on this aspect. May I request Justice Kannan to go first?
Yeah, you were asking about what is the data protection, how is it going to be protected? See, there are issues. There is a doubt. In fact, to what extent data which is shared online could be protected? How much of it will go spill? It's a major challenge. It's just not for court. Anyone who is using transmission of data through internet, what is the protection which is available? It's a general concern, a larger concern, just not restricted only to the court use. So therefore, there is already a recommendation coming through Sri Krishna Committee recommendations are there. So therefore, I don't know what is really holding up or why is it not become law yet. But it is, if it is done, it is bound to be done. And therefore, if it is done, I think we'll be in some way in the right path. But in courts, see, to take a question of what is even happening there, I see that there is an eternal person in the chat box who says the inspection of documents in arbitral proceedings. It was happening actually yesterday. How are the documents? Originally, if you are only looking at documents and then showing the document before the camera, then you see the person peers over the screen and trying to see. It didn't happen. So I was suggesting to the person, why didn't you send the document by immediately email, or what document you have? Do you have a scan copy? He said he had. And then this was sent. And the witness at the other end has said, now you have received the document there. Please, can you open the document from your computer or your cell phone? You open the document, you look at it. Yes, this document is mine. Entered the document. A presentation had been made before the witness, where a PowerPoint presentation was made. Did you do this? The person is saying, no, this was not my presentation. This is it has been doctored. So therefore, what could have been probably thought of previously of confronting witnesses through documents? How do you make the person see whether these documents are available or not? Then it's possible. But probably some changes in law would require to be taking place. Now, what documents will be done? How is this safety of this document done? How is the data protected? What is transmitted? What is confidential? How does it, when it goes through internet means, how is it getting protected? How is it encrypted and then safety assured? These are surely issues which I won't be truly able to answer correctly, but I'm sure there are technicians and technocrats who know how to put these places in safety net. And if that is done, I think it's fine. You must understand, court processes normally are public. They are nothing confidential about our court proceedings. So, except of course in Arbitration Act, you have everything confidential. You have in mediation, confidentiality has to be protected. But the large number of cases of what we're talking about, 32.98 million cases, they're all cases in public courts, in open courts. So therefore, we are not really talking about the confidentiality in a big way. You must understand that every plaint or a statement, if it is lodged in court, it is public. It's public document. Case law is there like that. Therefore, accessibility for any member of the public is possible. It is just necessary for the person to make an application, give out a reason as to why he requires it. In one case, probably from Bombay High Court with Rajesh Khanna's will, to what extent it could be made public? Does a person have a right of access to that will was a question which was brought. And they said that is a different thing. That is, not everyone will be able to access a document like a will, but anyone in Book 1 in the Registration Act, like a sale deed or a gift deed, anyone can obtain. Encumbrance, anyone can obtain. All that information, all that evidence of what is brought in public courts, even if there is no secrecy there, if it cannot be really, you can't give that data protection. I would like to believe that we shouldn't be worried. What is possible in public courts ought to be, even if there is no confidentiality maintained in those types of cases, we shouldn't be really worried. We shouldn't have objections coming for every type of evidence which is put before court through this online process. Oh no, look how things have been breached, how confidentiality is lost. There is no confidentiality in open court system. That's what we need to know. So therefore, to that extent, we should be prepared to accept that even if confidentiality is compromised somewhere in certain type of litigations, you must see whether they relate to matters which ought to have been maintained confidential. Those are areas which will have to mark distinctly, even when the courts pronounce the policies or the administration looks into seeing what would be available, where data has to be protected confidentially. All that we'll have to see in the context of what requires to be confidential in the way our litigation scenario pans out. That's the way I would do it.
Any other, regulatory interventions that you think are required for online dispute resolution, Justice Kannan?
What other regulatory thing, Chitra? I won't really see anything emerging from a court system point of view. But surely procedural laws may have to go in for changes because we have not given any room for so much of integration of technology in our evidence. Though the Information Technology Act makes possible digital evidence is available, the regulatory mechanisms of how the court systems will have to be altered for dispute resolution. I don't see anything beyond the procedural laws requiring to be changed to conform to the changes which the technology will bring. Otherwise, I have no idea. Probably Sachin or Chitu may be able to give an additional inputs on what regulation do they think could become necessary.
Chitu, can you add to what Justice Kannan has said about regulatory interventions now for ODR?
Regulation, see, I think we are moving in the right direction where, first of all, we wanted acceptance. And, people are saying that, yes, we will do it. And we are seeing that movement that, yes, there is acceptance, we will do it. They are actually taking in e-signatures right now. Evidence online, just now Justice Kannan mentioned about pen drive, and you don't even have to be there, right? So all that is great. So I think the open-mindedness is there, change in mindset, as Sachin said, is there. I think that is more important. Regulation where, if something comes out electronically, yes, it is enforceable. If that comes out, that's more than enough, I guess. I don't think we want to put in too much of procedures, and really, it defeats the purpose of online dispute resolution, I think. Mainly, if you can accept it and whatever outcomes come, we enforce it, I think, that'll be great.
That's a very important point you make, Chitu, the ability of regulation to suppress. I mean, absolutely. Sachin, anything you'd like to add?
I think it has been suitably covered, but the only thing I'll add is that maybe at some, but I particularly appreciate Chitu's point about not over-regulating, because that can be a disaster. But I really like the point. One point I want to emphasize is maybe at some point in time, there needs to be maybe regulator support. For instance, if there are resolution mechanisms built in for the finance sector, and you are building a resolution mechanism into so that banks can more effectively solve something, then you might need some regulatory support so that if there is a settlement of any kind, that settlement can be enforced very quickly without having to kind of go to the courts or anything. It could happen through like an automatic adjustment on your credit record, or it could be a payment that gets immediately facilitated. So you could have, I have a feeling that when you start wading into areas like property rights, when you start property disputes, you start wading into those kinds of things, you might need at some point in time regulatory enablement in those sectors to allow for very smart enforcement to happen without having to go to the court. So I have a feeling that that time may not be immediately here, but I'll give you a very small example. Chitu's familiar with this. In the high-powered committee recommendations on payments that happened a few years back, there was a very explicit section, and I think Chitu was involved in that, in getting that recognition that we need to build a automatic dispute resolution system into that. So that's a very small example, but you're going to see ultimately those kinds of things requiring some level of regulation, Chitra, to kind of create these robust systems that speak to each other so that the resolutions are happening outside the courts, but they're seamless. They don't ultimately fall at the juncture of enforcement, So I think that those are needed. For now, what was highlighted, which is recognizing the sanctity of a resolution, whether it's a mediated award or an arbitral award, even if it's online, small adjustments on procedure, IT Act, adducement of evidence, those kinds of things. I think those things are important because not much is needed, but ultimately, as we imagine this as being a large, powerful system that empowers citizens to take care of their own needs, whether inside business or society, we might need a little bit more going forward.
Sachin, there is a question which is a request for an illustration. The question is, Sachin sir spoke about ODR being a combination of ADR and the power of technology and data. Could you please elucidate the same with an example? Apart from merely going online, what else does the scope of ODR include?
Let me give a small example. I think the best way to look at it is, we think the dispute happens somewhere and we settle it online or resolve it online. I think what we have to start seeing it, could it become a seamless process happening online from the time when you started relating to the situation? And I'll give you an example. I'm on a travel website, and my interactions on the travel website, including my voice call with the agent, is showing the system that there is going to be a problem. There's going to be a problem. It is already flagging that problem. And so it comes to a point where the system recognizes there's going to be a problem. Like, Sachin, have you seen this before you confirm this? So the point I'm making is that we need to stop looking at it as dispute happened somewhere, let's send it somewhere for resolution. We need to start seeing it as born inside digital systems. And that's where, as the systems start listening to the data, Sachin gave this date, it was July 28th. The ticket agent is booking for August 28th. Sachin has asked for a copy of the audio recording that has not been shared. Usually when situations like this happen, customers take recourse to court mechanism or get frantic because that happens. Let's respond with a solution right now to solve the problem. So what I'm trying to say is that I think that we need to start seeing ADR or ODR as directly integrated in such a way that, like Chitu said, the mediator role may arise at some point in time, but the system is learning about your behavior and trying to mitigate the dispute at various junctures. I think that would be really sophisticated ODR. That is one example, but there are so many other examples that will come into financial services. When you're paying your EMIs and there is a delay, there is a slowdown and you lose your job or something, can the system react proactively to prevent a situation where you shut off and say, let me go into hiding because I'm not going to be able to pay my loan? Like, how do systems become intelligent to respond to that and to meet you where you are rather than letting the situation become toxic where ultimately it breaks down? I think that we're going to start seeing some real innovations in those areas as well.
Thank you, Justice Kannan, Sachin, and Chitu for participating and sharing information on this dialogue. For participants, the Daksha Fellowship admissions are open still, and those interested can apply. There are 3 streams of classes in this fellowship. The first relates to law and technology. The second is regulatory policy, and the third is the disputes track. You'll find more information on the Daksha Fellowship website, www.dakshafellowship.org.in. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Chitra. Thank you, Justice Kannan. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Chitra. Thanks, Sachin. Thanks, Justice Kannan.